As you know, this evening we're going to talk about the history of Oliver. And I'm going to move pretty fast on this program this evening because I have tried to cover it from when it was, you might say, in the early 1900s all the way to when Agco owned everything, you might say, that wasn't available from Case New Holland or John Deere. So it's we're going to cover approximately 90 years of time. So we'll get started then. There, you all probably recognize that when you came in. I bought that tractor from Tripco Implement in Corcoran in 1971. Everybody else was already buying 856s and so forth, and I just couldn't round up the money for that kind of a fancy tractor, so this is what I ended up with. And then now we're starting, the first company that merged was American Seeding Machine Company. They brought grain drills and harrows, but basically grain drills. That's where Oliver really picked up their need with grain drills, or what helped Oliver be what they were. Then the next company was Oliver himself. And of course, everybody, to make them aware, their big name was plows. He made his name in history with the Oliver plows, and I've only got one slide of it because we could go on and on with all the different plows he had built. Then we're going to, next company that came into it at the same time was Hart Parr. That's one example of one of their real old Hart Parrs. This is the Hart Parr that was in production at the time of the merger. There were 3 models. This is the biggest one, a 2850. They had an 1836, same cross motor, and they had a 1224. Those were the 3 models. Then I happened to come up with a slide of a little bit better looking Hart Parr here. So that's just another example of the newer version of what the first one was, which were basically out of production in 1929. We're going to go back to this one because then I want to also make mention that in 1929, starting into 1930, Hart Parr had started with a tricycle type tractor. If you remember, by this time, International Harvester had been on the market with their regular farm wall for several years already. But they were just in the development stages of it. The one model was this 1828, later called an 1827, and then they had a 2844. They also came in standard treads, but the big push was for them. And so they were just starting into that at this time. Next company to come into the corporation or whatever was merger here was Nicholson Shepherd. Nicholson Shepherd is what gave Oliver the threshing machines, corn pickers, combines, the red, for those that are in the know, the Red River Special Threshing Machine of Oliver, that's where it came from, Nicholson Shepherd. They were in Michigan. And they were a big asset. Imagine in 1929 having a combine already. So we have the company, the 4 companies that formed Oliver Equipment Company. There's the first board of directors. Interesting first board of directors. Now to decide what you're going to call it. Even though my graph shows it was called Oliver, they still hadn't picked the name at this time. Well, it seemed that of the 4 companies, the Oliver Chill Plow Works was worth more than the other 3 companies together. So Mr. Oliver said, well, since I own the most of it here, it should be named after me, so it should be Oliver. So we arrived at Oliver Corporation. Then he threw another wrinkle to the new board. He said, you know, by the way things look, I don't want shares. Just give me the cash. And that's what he got. For those of you that know, 1929 probably was the smartest move he made that day. because he got his cash. Then they brought in McKinsey Manufacturing just the next year, actually a few weeks after the other. They brought to them potato equipment, and which in those days, almost every farm planted some potatoes. If it wasn't for anything else, it was for their own use. After that came the 60s, 70s, and 80s tractors. Got the 70s styled. The 60 was styled similarly, but the 60 didn't come in 37. That came in, different authors, talk different times, but basically around 1941, 1942. I'm pretty sure 41 because I do have a 60 in the shed that has a serial number they list as 1941. They also had the 80. Now the 80 stayed unstyled through its career, and also was the first Oliver with a diesel engine. They built 136 80 diesels, and so that was quite a thing for the Oliver Company. 1937, if you want to think about it, and to sell 136 of them in those days. So now we got the Radex plowshare. Remember that, those of you that are old enough? The one on the left, your left up there, is the old conventional where you take it off and take it up to the blacksmith shop and have to get it sharpened. And sometimes he'd tell you, I remember his dad telling Dad, we'll have to cut the point off, weld a new point on it, and so forth. Well, then in 1940, here we got this throwaway shear, you know. They talk about the Throwaway Society of today. It started in 1940. And so that was quite a thing, and they were really advanced on that because my dad's Ford 8N Ford with a plow, the plow he bought in 1947 still had the old type of shears on the other side. So that was quite an advancement in the thing, you know. And so now we're on to the Ann Arbor machine.
Oh, just go back up once.
Oh, there we go. Ann Arbor came in to the company 1943. The balers. Now Oliver had a baler to bale. That also was a company, if I recall right, in Michigan. And so, and as you can see, they had, this is a little bit later picture, but they had some, for those days, pretty modern balers. If you notice the lower left corner, they got a pickup baler. So now we got the Cleveland Tractor Company comes into the Oliver. Little cleat tracks like that. This one happens to the Oliver. I couldn't find a good cleat track picture, but the cleat track is very similar. Actually, at this time of the takeover, it was one and the same. Look, the OC3 and the HG were the exact same tractor. And the HG, instead of saying was there, you have the green color of them. And remember the wide track, the cultivate corn with them. It's quite a thing for that day. So now we're past the Cleveland tractors. We're up to 1948, and we got the fleet line. 66, 77, 88, and there was also a 99. The big thing with the fleet line of tractors was all of a sudden, here's Oliver with a completely independent power takeoff. So you could stop the tractor, and the baler or corn picker behind would keep on running, and they basically use that same clutch all the way up through the 880s as far as that goes, and it was a very easy, very dependable fixed clutch. I had an implement Oliver dealer here this afternoon, and he came up and told me afterwards, you were right, he was a clean, easy one to fix, and I'm sure maybe Chuck will tell us the same thing after the show tonight, you know, because what, on like the 88, 77, 3 bolts, and you had the cover off the power takeoff, you know. And so that was the big thing with the fleet lines coming out in 48. So now we got, in 1952, they acquired the Farquhar Company. Big thing there was they had a good manure spreader, amongst other things, as you can see, but that was one of the big things. Also, for the first time, Oliver got into the sawmill business. So you can see, you know, just a couple of things, because back in the 50s, there were still a lot of farmers, places around the countryside that were sawing lumber and that. So that was a big thing. Now we're at 1952, the BJ Manufacturing Company. Gilroy, California. For several years already, Oliver had been working with this company to build bulldozer blades and small scrapers and things like that. As you can see here, they put a Super 99 GM, the way it looks, on the front of a scraper. And I'm sure that they decided they could take all the profit instead of just part of it, which is the way those companies usually work. So now we're at the Super Series. Got a Super 66, Super 77, Super 99, which is exactly what you have sitting out here in the parking lot when you came. And there also was a 99 six-cylinder diesel and a 99 six-cylinder gas. This happened to have a GMC three-cylinder two-cycle engine in it, which a lot of people used to say it had a motor that sounded like a Banshee when it was running. At the time this tractor came out, about 1955, it was a little bit later from the rest of them, but not much. It was rated at 77 horsepower, and Oliver claimed it to be the biggest tractor on the market at the time. So it was an interesting era. So now we're going to go to what they call the three-digit series of tractors. Got the 660, the 550, 770. There was also an 880. And the Super 99 GM became a 990. And they had to still retain the gas in the Super 99. It was called a 950. And they came out with a 995, which had, instead of a clutch, it had a torque converter type drive to the transmission. So, and those tractors, especially the 770, 880, were built into the early 60s, from what I've researched. Serial numbers and that I think took the 70 up to 63. And you'll find that interesting in a few minutes here. So now we're at White Motor bought out Oliver. And White Motor was a truck company, and they wanted a similar type of business as far as production-wise, but with a different sales aspect, a different market than what Wright trucks were, because they thought they would like to diversify. And so they got into it. And of course, right when they got into it was just when Oliver was releasing their 1800, 1900, four-digit series tractors. Big thing here was, even though I understand some of the 880s, you could get a kit to make 1,000 RPM, but it was kind of an awkward fitting. But these came with a standard 540,000 RPM simply by shifting the gear case on the power takeoff in the back and putting a different shaft in, depending on whether you wanted it to be 540 or 1,000 RPM. And they also came with three-point hitch, even though the old 770s, 880s had kind of a cobble-on three-point hitch. They tried to make you believe it was, but this came with a really more decent three-point hitch. Then we came to marketing these tractors. They called them the Oliverettes. There you are, fellas. one of the top people in the front office, one of the men, and a lady that worked in Oliver were dedicated and assigned to the job of picking 10 ladies to get to learn how to do these tractors, to drive around for dealer shows and fair shows and so forth. They only had 8 tractors. They picked 10 people just in case one couldn't make it or something. They used 770s industrial tractors with reversal torque transmissions to make it simple for the ladies to handle it. And they did a bunch of practicing, and from what the historians say, they got pretty good at it. So who says that ladies weren't helping to sell Olivers way back when, you know? So now we're to Cockshot, 1962. They bought it. Of course, for those of you that are familiar, Cockshot, I'm sure, was ready and available because they'd already been taken over by a greedy corporate world from the Great Britain, and were selling it off piece by piece wherever they could get a piece of money. And that's why they bought it, because Cockshot happened to be at the time a tractor that was still making money, or a company that was still making money, so they had a little money in the coffer, and unfortunately had relinquished enough of their shares, the original owners, to the stock market to where they couldn't control the board anymore. So they bought Cockshot in 1962. Now in 1963, of course, with White Farm in charge, they were on the move at new innovations called a mechanical front end, which was put on at first the 1800s. And looks like, you know, a pretty substantial front end, and I'm sure it was starting to come to the thing because some companies were already thinking of four-wheel drives of some kind or another, so they came with the mechanical front end. Then in 1963, there was another major company in trouble. It's called Minneapolis Moline, right here in Minneapolis. There they are. They bought them. And so now they've got 3 different brands of tractors. And so for quite a number of years, they produced 3 different brands. Never changed the colors. Did overlap back and forth. If one Minneapolis Moline was a little lacking 1 horsepower class, they'd figure out an Oliver to do it. I didn't go into all the tractors because we'd be here half an hour just going through all the different models that got flip-flopped back and forth, because Cockshots were still being produced, and like an 1850 Oliver was kind of the reddish colored Cockshot, sold in Canada. Now they got a purple Oliver. They had a market of plow. There you are. They made 6 of them that color. I was researching, last minute researching the other night, late night on the internet. We now have a fellow in Iowa that has restored one. Took it back to the shop, so to speak, and painted it back purple. He also was able to accomplish the plow. It was a model 575, 70-mount plow that they used in the advertising scheme with these 6 Olivers, taking them to different dealer shows and fairs and so forth. What they were trying to prove in their marketing is that it didn't matter what color the tractor was, it could pull their plow. In other words, it didn't have to be a green and white one or a green and yellow one. It could be a red one, it could be a green one, a brighter green one. It could be whatever. Their plow would work behind any colored tractor. So that was an interesting marketing scheme. I don't remember. Do you remember, Chuck?
No.
It blew me away. That's fine, Chuck. Before he's ready to put you on the spot. Because it blew me away. I didn't know about it until the research. And then in 1965, trawler production ended. Of course, White had only bought 2 models in the first place, OC4 and the OC9. And they ended the production on them in 65. I don't know where. some talk this afternoon after the show. A couple of the fellows said that they thought that Caterpillar had picked up some of the rights to, like their big one, which had air steering and stuff, and very possible. I didn't run into anything on that. But theirs was one of that, I think that was an OC-12, and just picked out a couple pictures for you here. And then, of course, the OC-4 would have been just a bit bigger than this, but looked like that, because what they picked was two styles that, when they bought, that they thought would be fit for agriculture use, because that's what they were going to be as an agriculture company. So now we're at White Farm Equipment formed. I don't have any pictures with that, because what it did was White Farm Equipment rolled everything together now. They had been producing Oliver's in a plant, Minneapolis Moline in a plant, Cockshot in a plant, all with different management heads, different factories, had retained most of the colors for all of them. And so they decided that it was time to consolidate things, make more money, and move to one color, silver. So that's what happened in 1969. The whole thing got folded together. Then in 1970, they thought they were going to make big money selling lawn tractors. You know, things like this. Maybe you wanted that one. Maybe you wanted those two. I don't have a picture, but they would have even sold you a Chris Craft bowl. They also would have sold you certain appliances, and I couldn't find a lot of history in just switch all appliances, but if you wanted to make the wife happy, you could bring her home an appliance at the same time when you bought the lawn tractor, you know. So, and all of a sudden, they decided there wasn't so much money in the lawn tractor business, so MTD bought it. So, goodbye lawn tractors. Now we should be at what they call the loader special tractor. There it is. The only place you could get this was out of the Fargo branch. You had to order 25 at a time. History behind this, two dealers in North Dakota, especially one, a dealer in Edgeley, wanted them to bring back the Oliver 770. Just a small, simple, cheap tractor that they could put a loader on it. Because they had a lot of livestock in the area, and guys wanted just a tractor with that they could leave the loader on all the time, and they didn't want to put a lot of money into the tractor. So they kept after the branch manager up there at Fargo, and finally he agreed, got a deal, made arrangements. They met with the big boys in Charles City, spent about a week down there putting together a tractor. Pretty basic. You can see the back end, no 3-point hitch, no, just some power takeoff, there's a PTO on it, but just some basic hydraulics to hook to a loader. And thing about this, I don't know if I mentioned it, if you were a dealer, you had to take 25 at a crack. Minimum of 25. They wouldn't set up production for less than 25. Well, it happened. The dealer at Edgeley and the dealer at Williston, each ordered tractors. The Edgeley was first, they got 25 right away. They happened to haul grain to the cities, so on the way back from the cities, they stopped at the Fargo branch and load their semi up with tractors to haul back to the dealership too. The stripped down tractor for the loader like this, list price was $39.95. Could add a few luxuries if you wanted to, but list price was $39.95 for the basic. If you bought a regular, $15.55. The list price was $73.25. So you can see there wasn't quite a difference if you just needed a basic tractor for the loader. And in all reality, over 500 of these were sold. So they did a pretty good job of selling tractors out there. And next we come, 1974, the white four-wheel drive. With full four-wheel drive, one of them was a 4150. That's, it kind of gives you a schematic of it. There you go. Then in 1975, they came with the white tractor with a white name and silver color. In 1976, the last meadow green Oliver tractor, a model 2255, came off the Charles City plant on February 13th, 1976. That tractor sold for $21,860 list price. What it sold for, who knows? So that was, now you've seen the last of the green. Now, 1979, White Ag Division sold to TIC. TIC was a Texas firm, no experience in machine production or machine sales or anything like that. They were into oil, chemicals, those kind of things. Absolutely no experience at all. Notice they bought it in 1979. Remember, 1979 was just starting into the hard times of the farming career. Interest rates were headed up. I'm sure they found out real quick they didn't push a lot of tractors out. So, what happens? 1980, TIC sold White Farm Equipment to Allied, who was also in chemicals and aerospace oils and things like that. So, you know, what experience do they have? Never been anything like this. I'm sure they thought they had a fancy look at their account, probably looked at a fancy balance sheet and thought they could make money at that too, you know. So, anyway, they kept on. I don't show this, but in 1984, they bought New Idea. Those of you that don't know, New Idea was big time into corn pickers. Well, this time was past corn pickers, but manure spreaders and hay equipment, that kind of thing. They were really big into manure spreaders. And so that happened. Then we go on. 1985, White Combines sold to Massey Ferguson. That sure was a way for Allied to get off some money and get some money shook loose, and so they sold them to Massey Ferguson. Then in 1985, what happens? Allied sells to Klockner Humboldt Deutsch AG, 1985, German company. Reading the books and the stories, so I'll dare use it. The slang amongst the farming community was danged if I was going to buy a tractor built by a Kraut. So anyway, that's where they went, you know. And interesting enough, besides, then the Deutsch Alish Corporation was formed to run this Deutsch business, and the head man that started AGCO was the big boy, Robert Ratliff, was the head of the Deutsch Alish Corporation. And in 1989, White Farm Equipment built the Deutsch Alish 9100. And in 1991, White Tractor Line and the Heston Corporation were bought. Got to back up here, Sally. There we go. That's the one I want. 1990, AGCO was formed. I'm sorry, people. 5 Alice Chalmers, Deutsch Alice executives, with Robert Ratliff at the head, bought Deutsch Alice. How did they finance this? They figured out how much accounts receivable Deutsch Alice had coming in from all the different dealers that were going to be owing them money for tractors and parts and all that kind of stuff. They sold that amount of money to a holding company an investment firm called Hamilton, Robinson and Company. That's how they got the down payment to form AGCO. Talk about taking a chance, because there's your income for the next several months because you just sold it to the holding firm. So then immediately, I'm sure that's why they stepped in and they bought the White Tractor line and the Heston Corporation. Because remember now, Deutz Alice wasn't part of White. I just brought it in because these are the people that, how they got into forming AGCO. So that's why I brought in the one-time shot there, I brought in the Deutz Alice line. And so then they bought the White Tractor line and the Heston Corporation for $36 million. 1992, they decided they had to round up some more money. So they offered 1/2 of AGCO stock to the public. So, and they sold it. So that's how they rounded up their second chunk of change. 1993, they bought all of the White and Ag owned by Allied, all the rest of it. Oh, I'm sorry, and we go back. And also in 1993, they bought North American Operations, Massey Ferguson, $98.8 million. So now you see why they went in the stock market. Because they had, this Ratliff had lots of things all lined up. There you go, you got the White Tractor and the White New Idea manure spreader. That's the small one. Okay, now we're in 1994, and we have, excuse me a minute, I've got to move a page here. Let's back it up once. 1994, McConnell, that's, okay, now they bought McConnell Tractors. McConnell Tractors was a company owned by Ward McConnell in Kinston, North Carolina. In 1988, he had bought the Massey Ferguson four-wheel drives. And that's all he produced at his plant there, because that had been his dream. And so that's what McConnell, they bought it. So now they had a Massey Ferguson four-wheel drive. That's what it looked like at that time. Now they bought the black machine planter. I researched this. It took a while, but I finally found a little bit. It's a small company owned by one man in Iowa at the time. It's the old Black Hawk planter plant. But what he did, it's in Vinton, Iowa. You decide what kind of a planter you wanted, and he'd make the big fancy folding planter frame hitch. They bought his company, and you'll see by the end of the program you'll understand why. They bought his company for the hitch. That's all they wanted, was that hitch. Now we got the Ag Equipment Group. For those of you that are real familiar, companies like Glencoe, Ty, Farmhand, which had bought Green Isle and so forth. That's that group. They bought that. So now they got into a few other things there. 1966. I won't try the first couple words, but in Brazil, Massey Ferguson in Brazil. Massey Ferguson in Brazil, was the distributorship and production of tractors for selling in Brazil. And Massey Ferguson held 45% of the Brazil tractor market at the time they bought it. 45% of it. So they just bought a distributorship that held 45% of the market. So, you can see where they were moving there. They told me I wouldn't last 2 sessions. 1996, 1996, Western Combine Corporation. Sole purpose for that purchase, to sell Massey Ferguson combines in Canada. Sole purpose. Now they can sell Massey Ferguson combines in Canada. Fendt in Germany, 1997. The Fendt tractor company was the leading technology, leading tractor technology, however you want to say it. They led the field in the technology of production of tractors in Germany. They bought them. So now they've got a lot of technology that they didn't have to engineer. I'm going to back up. We're missing one, Sally, but that's
Go back two. Go back two. One more.
Oh, you're right again. See, that's why you have the manager around, fellas. Dronningberg Industries in Denmark. They were Europeans' leading precision farming technology company, meaning all kinds of things. Technology as far as developing planters and fertilizer spreaders that would control how and where, how you put the seed down, the approximate amounts. Even got into the developing of certain seeds and certain ways of fertilizing and so forth. They were strictly a technology company for Europe. They were in Denmark, as it shows. And so that's why they bought that. Now they've got the technology to put on their planters and fertilizer spreaders and all that kind of things. Spray Coop out of Wilmer and Jackson. Got it here, just down its battery. There you go. And they bought that. They brought the spray coop and the ag sprayers. One plant was in Wilmer. Where these were built was Jackson, where they're now building tractors. Now we got Case IH. They bought the rest of Case IH. When they bought the Heston in the first place, Case IH had a deal going with Heston that they had ability to buy a certain amount of product from Heston. So now AGCO bought the whole rest of it, so now Case IH is out of it. But that's what that really, by completing the purchase, means. 2002. Now all of a sudden we're talking Caterpillar. Yeah, you got it. There they are. Caterpillar sold the whole ag division to AGCO. Why? Well, it seems Caterpillar was also playing around with diesel engines for railroad diesels, especially electric motive diesel company. And they have, from what I have read in the Trains magazine, they have a diesel engine developed for the big railroad locomotives that will meet the Tier 4 requirements for emissions when there only need to be a Tier 2 right now. So they were working with EMD, and then this got sold. All of a sudden, you read in the Train magazine that, well, they got tired of working with EMD, so they just bought them. So that's enough. We'll leave that for the Caterpillar man for next year now. Valtra, company in Italy. They sell farm tractors, all off-road equipment. They're a diesel engineer. So now AGCO has an in-house engine maker. And Europe, as I said, talked about other countries. In Europe, AGCO has 46% of their sales of the whole company are done in Europe. So of 100% of their sales worldwide, 46% happen in Europe. Now we have Agritella built tractors. Well, seems Agritella had a deal with Valtra to build specialty tractors for Valtra as well as for themselves. When I say specialty, vineyard, orchard tractors were kind of their specialty. Knowing they have a plant in Italy, I would venture to say we all know that wine is a big factor in Italy and France, but they also had a plant in Finland. So now, if they want to build something in Finland, they got it. I had a fellow here this afternoon that said that he had friends in Sweden, I believe it was, that they had bought a Valtra tractor that was built in Finland. So evidently they built more likely more than just the vineyard or orchard tractors up there in the Agritella plant, you know. So now they bought 50% of Lavarda Spa. It's harvesting equipment in Italy. Where else? And then at the same time in 2007, they purchased SFIL. It's a South American manufacturing company of tillage and seeding equipment. So now they're back playing around in South America again too with some more. Now we get to 2009. The last agricultural tractors are phased out. Last tractor built in France. And how this tractor was marketed was very interesting. What AGCO did is they took all the dealers for a few years back that had sold one of these tractors, put their name in the hat. Whatever dealer's name got pulled out of the hat, got the tractor to sell. Dealer in Nebraska pulled the name out of the hat, sold it to a farmer he did business with in Nebraska. AGCO, very nice company. They hauled the dealers and family, and they hauled the farmer's family to France to be there to get pictures as the tractor came off the assembly line. So that's the last you see of the orange AGCO tractors. Then they also bought the rest of Lavarda, and in 2011 they also bought 50% of Amity, A-M-I-T-Y, JV. It's they develop and distribute air seeding and tillage equipment in the United States. High horsepower tractor production comes to Jackson, Minnesota. You and I did a little research on that. You and I and every other taxpayer in this state helped build that plant up. If you remember, I said the spray coupe sprayers were built out there. Well, they've tremendously enlarged this plant for this tractor out there. And they also offer tours, so if you happen to be going out that way, you might check. I was told this afternoon that some towns west of here have regular bus trips out there to tour. They dramatically expanded the plant out there to do this high horsepower tractor production. They also expanded the Heston plant in Heston, Kansas. Then they decided, you know, things are pretty good. 2011, you might as well get in the grain bin business. There they are. If you drive through the country, you see a lot of GSI bins go up around the country. I'm sure Big Shot drove through the country one day and says, why the heck ain't we making money on them? Corn's $7 a bushel yet. AGCO, I said that, AGCO to expand the Heston plant. Okay, AGCO today. Just remember, Robert Latliff, head of Deutz Alice, and 4 other guys would put this whole thing together. That's all, folks. That's less of Oliver White equipment. That's the only thing that was produced by Oliver White equipment that's left on the market. And I'll bet you $10 that a good share of those planters have a black machine hitch on them. Just guessing because they they don't come in 4, 6, or 8 rows anymore. They come in 16, 18, and 20 rows or more. So that is all that they have left that came out of White equipment. That's the kind of tractors come off the plant in Jackson. And even bigger ones. These are front wheel assist, this one picture is. But even the real big ones, they all come off. The Cat Challenger comes out of Jackson. And some of their larger horsepower two-wheel drive tractors come out of Jackson. There you are, folks. That's the company today. So, if somebody wants to hit the lights. Thank you, dear. Anybody with any questions? I'd be happy to answer them. At least I'll try.